Chapter 2. Alex Heller. Wednesday, September 6th. Noon. Just like that. In a flash. Everything was gone. Before Alex's father killed himself, he shot and killed 5 students, including Jessica. He shot Manny and put him in a coma. And seemingly by accident, shot and killed a teacher, Sarah Hughes, in the next classroom. And all Alex had were questions and a bottomless well of grief. No matter how many different ways he tried to pull sense from the senseless, Alex could not make sense of the tragedy. This was the kind of thing you saw on TV that happened to other people, not to his friends, not to his family. Everything felt like a bad dream. He hoped to wake up any minute and find things normal again. Except he wasn't waking up. Nobody was. This nightmare was real and had shaken the entire island to its core. Neither Milo nor Katie would return his calls. He wasn't sure if it was because they didn't want to talk to him, or if their parents had forbidden them to talk to the son of the madman. Alex sat in his bedroom, staring blankly at the television as it broadcast collages of the funerals from earlier, photos of the victims, photos of his father, reporters standing outside the school, a flock outside the funeral home, and even the island's most famous celeb, Jon Conway, though Alex wasn't sure what the hell he had to do with this. The only thing Alex was grateful for was the reporters were finally gone from the front of his house. The TV cut to a reporter in front of the island's police station, where Alex's mom stood, fielding yet more questions she didn't have answers to. Probably variations of the same questions they'd asked him. "Do you know why your father did this? Were you aware that your father had a gun? Did he ever talk about any of his victims? Has he ever hit you? Has he ever hit your mother or sister?" Alex's answer was the same for all the questions. No. He was as shocked as anyone, if not more so. Since he didn't have answers, the police ransacked their house, seizing every computer, flash drive, and journal his father had kept over the years. Alex wondered if they'd found some answer in the evidence they took, and maybe that was why his mom was down at the police station. He watched as the TV showed a blonde reporter talking. He didn't bother turning the volume up. Not like they'd said anything new since Friday, just speculation heaped on top of sensationalism. After the reporter said her piece, the TV flashed to a familiar video that Alex had almost forgotten about. An interview with Alex's dad after he'd won a Washington State Teacher of the Year award 3 years ago, a prestigious honor for the island and the school in particular. Alex turned the volume up to hear his father discussing the importance of connecting with students and how he used stories to teach. As his voice came through the TV, Alex felt a sudden hollow in his stomach, realizing that confiscated computers meant confiscated photos of his father. This video on the news might be the only chance he'd get to hear his voice again. Alex grabbed his TV remote and hit record on the DVR. Dad looked so happy in the video. So normal. So unlike the man who opened fire in his classroom who killed his own students. It made no sense. He was a devoted man who often spent his own time and money to help teach his students, above and beyond the job. He loved teaching, loved his students. Dad was practically a genius. Surely, he could have struck it rich had he done anything other than teach. For him to do something like this, there had to be something wrong. If that were the case, the next question was, for how long had something been wrong? The sting of guilt for not noticing was sharp. While their family was relatively close, especially compared to other families Alex knew, it wasn't like they had real conversations, at least not many that went more than a few inches below the surface. Alex was wrapped up in his own world, with his own problems, and rarely allowed his parents a glimpse inside, or looked beyond his to see into their worlds. If things were different, would he have seen the signs? Could he have prevented the massacre? The TV returned to a scene outside one of the funerals. Alex lowered the volume, stared at his cell phone, then dialed Milo again. Still no answer. He left a voicemail. His fourth. "Please, Milo, call me. I need to talk to someone," he said, trying not to cry. He hung up, feeling stupid for talking about his needs, when Jessica, the girl Milo had a big crush on, was dead, and their closest friend Manny was in the hospital in a coma and on life support. As long as he'd been friends with Milo, Alex had been the more popular of the two. Milo had always been his nerdy sidekick, but he loved the guy like a brother. Milo was hysterical and into the same games, movies, and stuff Alex liked. He was the perfect hangout buddy, never too serious, never depressing, despite his family problems, and almost always around. Perhaps the coolest thing about Milo was that he was an awesome writing partner. The two had written several scripts together, TV shows and movies they hoped to someday pitch to Hollywood, but suddenly, none of that mattered. Whatever friendship they had was severed by the inexplicable actions of Alex's dad. Alex considered calling Jesus, Manny's brother, to get an update on Manny's situation beyond the TV reports. But Alex figured he was the last person in the world that Jesus, or his family, wanted to hear from. He set the phone on his bed and crawled under his covers, listening to the soft white noise bleeding through the baby monitor. His 6-month-old sister murmured in her sleep, and he hoped she wasn't going to wake up soon. Aubrey was too young to understand that Daddy is in heaven, and kept looking for their father, waiting for him to come back home. It broke Alex's heart, and he wasn't very good at comforting her. At least if his mom were there, she could cuddle with Aubrey and distract her. Alex felt a flash of anger at his father. How could he do this? To his students? To his family? But as soon as the flash came, Alex felt more guilt. His father wouldn't do this. Something must have been wrong with him. There was no other explanation. Alex closed his eyes, exhausted. He needed a nap. He rested his head on a pillow, but only for a minute before the itch at the back of his head worked its way forward and forced him to his feet. Alex opened the door to his father's office and flicked on the overhead light. He stepped inside, picturing his dad sitting behind his desk, facing the doorway, looking up from his work and smiling. He hadn't always smiled when interrupted. Most times he was too busy to even look up. But Alex chose to remember the times he had looked up, happy to see him. The office was a disaster. The cops had tossed books from shelves, dumped boxes unceremoniously onto the ground, and pulled all the drawers out of his desk, leaving them sitting in a pile. Wires and cables were tangled atop his desk where his father had his computer set up so neatly just a few days ago. The office looked like it had been robbed. And in a way, it had been of everything his father had created. Alex felt a sudden rage at the cops for leaving this mess for him and his mother to clean. He grabbed one of the empty cardboard boxes that had been in the closet loaded with files and school paperwork, then sat on the ground and started putting stuff away. He didn't know what he could do to help his mom through this, but there was no reason she should have to clean the cops' mess. And maybe, if the cops hadn't taken everything important, Alex might find some answer to why his father snapped. He got through the bulk of the mess in about 20 minutes, putting papers into boxes and books back on the bookcase. He wasn't sure what they would do with all of his dad's stuff. There was something so alien about a person's possessions once that person was gone. It was almost as if they took on new properties, transformed by the absence of their owner. Ordinary made special, mundane made magic, and junk turned to treasure imbibed with memories. It gave Alex an idea for a short story about a dead man's possessions mourning their owner. He filed the idea away to mention to Milo, and then wondered if he and Milo would ever write together again. Or was their friendship as dead as the bodies being buried this week? Alex picked up an old baseball off the ground and placed it back on a wooden stand on the bookcase. Alex wondered what the ball meant to his dad. It wasn't signed by anyone, nor did it appear to be from a professional baseball game, at least as far as Alex could tell. Alex had seen it 100 times, yet never thought to ask his dad what made the ball so special. Alex was surprised to find so many books by authors he liked, such as Stephen King, Clive Barker, George R.R. Martin, Ray Bradbury, Neil Gaiman, and Philip K. Dick, among the tomes of classic literature. Alex felt the same hollow thud that had been thrumming through his body all morning. He had never known his dad was into so many of the same authors as he was. A few minutes here and there would have clued him into that and so much more. It might have made all of the difference in the world. It wasn't as though they'd never discussed fiction. They'd talked about writing a lot, in fact. His dad had always wanted to be a novelist and had started a few books over the years, but he'd never let Alex read them, said he wanted to wait until he'd written something he could be proud to show his son. Though a harsh critic of his own work, Dad had always been supportive of Alex's efforts. He seemed to genuinely enjoy many of Alex's stories, though he didn't shy away from offering constructive criticism. Alex regretted not showing his dad the scripts he and Milo had been working on. He had wanted to wait until they were polished, more mature, something he and Milo could feel proud of. But now... Alex closed his eyes, wanting to cry, to let it all out. But he couldn't. He hadn't cried since the shooting, even though he was sad, devastated, and all the things that should make a guy cry. But the tears hadn't come. Why? Did that mean he didn't really love his dad? He picked up a photo from the box, one of him and his dad at the shore on the north side of the island before it was fenced off. They'd spent the weekend, just the two of them, camping and fishing. Alex was 8 and holding the tiniest fish you could probably catch with a hook. It was his first fish, and the bobber almost dwarfed the thing, but to Alex, at the time, it had been the size of a whale. His dad had held the camera outstretched to squeeze them both into the frame, and though the picture was slightly out of focus, it managed to capture the magic of the moment. The photo was in a thick brown frame, placed prominently on his father's desk. Dad had said he put it there to remind him why he worked so hard, and so he'd remember the things that were truly important. A man like that doesn't shoot up his classroom. Not my dad. The sound of the doorbell repeatedly ringing broke the silence and sent a fresh panic flooding through Alex. Someone pressed the doorbell over and over as if the house were on fire. "What the hell?" Alex raced downstairs before the noise woke his sister. He threw the door open to find a short, beefy man in a dark blue t-shirt and jeans. Bruce Henderson, father of Teddy Henderson, one of the victims of the shooting. He was holding an aluminum baseball bat in his hands. Before Alex could even gasp, Mr. Henderson started swinging and screaming. Alex ducked, but just barely in time, and the bat caught him in the back, sending him sprawling to the porch, crying out in pain. "You're gonna pay!" Mr. Henderson screamed, his face an angry red, eyes wild. "Please, Mr. Henderson," Alex cried. "Don't hurt me." The man froze, bat over his head, poised and ready to strike. Then something shifted in his face as the rage turned to confusion, as if he were shaking off cobwebs from the thick of a dream. He looked down at Alex, as if he was surprised to see him there, and then up to the bat, seemingly surprised again to find the weapon in his hands. He lowered the bat, looking around as if lost. Alex breathed a sigh of relief and started to stand. But then, just as Alex thought he was safe, Mr. Henderson's eyebrows arched in anger, and he raised the bat again. A gunshot exploded behind Mr. Henderson. Then a man in a black Paladin security uniform appeared seemingly from nowhere. He aimed a pistol at Mr. Henderson and screamed, "Drop the bat!" Mr. Henderson turned to the security guard, and then again, looked like he'd just been woken up and realized what he'd been doing. "Put the bat down," the guard repeated. Mr. Henderson looked up, then at Alex guiltily, and placed the bat on the porch, gently, as if it might explode if he wasn't careful. "I'm so sorry." He broke into tears as the guard grabbed one of his arms and twisted it behind him, then the other, handcuffing him. Once Mr. Henderson was restrained, the guard used his radio to call dispatch. "This is Sanders. We've got a situation over at Mr. Heller's house." As Sanders started to inform dispatch what had happened, Alex heard the sound of his little sister screaming from inside the house. "Oh, shit." He pointed at the house. "My baby sister. I'll be right back." Alex motioned to Sanders, who nodded okay as he continued speaking into his radio. Alex went inside and closed the door, even though he wasn't sure what he was supposed to do. He sure as hell wasn't going to leave it open with Mr. Henderson on the verge of violence, restrained or not. Alex bounded up the stairs and into Aubrey's room to see her red-faced, screaming, crying her eyes out. He picked her up and pulled her to his chest. "It's okay," he whispered repeatedly, holding her tight, rocking her in his arms as he'd seen his mom do 100 times before. To his surprise, Aubrey calmed down, snuggling her tiny face against his chest. "Oh my God, she's letting me comfort her," Alex finally cried. He held Aubrey for a long minute, inhaling her scent and feeling the glow of being a big brother that he'd never felt before. Aubrey was asleep in minutes, also to his surprise. He lay her back in her crib, covered her with her baby blanket, then went back downstairs in case Sanders had any questions or needed to take his statement or anything. He opened the front door just as a black Paladin SUV rolled up into their driveway. Sanders led Mr. Henderson to the SUV and placed him in the back. The man kept crying, I'm sorry," to the guards, too distraught to see Alex in the doorway. Probably a good thing. Alex feared the man might see him, go off again, and get himself shot. Sanders took out a notepad and pen as he approached Alex. "Can you tell me what happened?" Alex stepped onto the porch, keeping the door partially open so he could hear if Aubrey cried again. The black van was still in his driveway, probably waiting for Sanders to finish. He gave his statement and said Sanders didn't miss anything, as he showed up pretty quickly right after Mr. Henderson got there. "Thank you. You saved me." "No problem, kid," Sanders said, even though he was 30, tops, hardly an old man, with a baby face and brown hair, cut military style, like all the guards who worked for Paladin. "Now, did Mr. Henderson say anything to you?" "No, he just said, 'You're gonna pay.'" "Because your dad killed his son?" Sanders asked, matter-of-factly, as if he were used to asking kids about their crazy dads who had just shot up the school. "I guess. I don't know what else he could have been mad at. I mean, I didn't know Teddy all that well." "And you're sure he didn't say anything else?" The way Sanders asked anything else struck Alex as odd, as if there were something in particular he thought that Mr. Henderson might have said. Alex was about to ask what he meant when his mom's silver Passat pulled into the driveway. She was out of the car in seconds, her eyes wide and scared as she dashed to the porch. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, ma'am," Sanders said. "There was just a little incident." "What kind of incident?" She looked at Alex and then back at Sanders. One of the fathers who lost his son in the shooting. He came to your house. He was pretty upset, had a baseball bat." "A bat?" Her voice rose 5 octaves. She turned to Alex and grasped his shoulders. "Oh my God, are you okay?" Alex hugged her. "Yeah, Mom, everything's okay. Officer Sanders arrested Mr. Henderson before he could do anything." She turned and glared at the SUV still in the driveway. He'd rarely seen his mom get angry, and this was the most furious he'd ever seen her. He was certain she was seconds from running to the SUV, pulling Mr. Henderson out, then pounding on him, despite being a small woman who'd never hurt a fly. "Everything's okay, Mom." Alex put a hand on her shoulder and met her gaze. "He's just upset about Teddy. I could tell he was just confused and angry. He said he's sorry. He wasn't sure why he felt a need to downplay the incident and protect Mr. Henderson, who'd just tried to kill him. But there was something in the man's eyes, sadness, or something along with the confusion in the moments between his bursts of anger. And that something called to Alex, asked him to show compassion. Mom wasn't feeling compassionate, however. "I want him in jail. I don't want him anywhere near my family." "We're going to take him to the police station now," Sanders said. "They'll have to decide what to do with him, and will probably ask if you want to press charges." "Damned right I do," she spat. Alex put his arm on her, trying to calm her. Her overreaction embarrassed him, especially given what his dad had done. People had a right to be angry. She couldn't get too worked up. "Okay, ma'am. We'll have someone get in touch with you. Might I make a suggestion?" "What's that?" Her tone was slightly calmer but suspicious. "Would you mind if we posted someone outside your house to keep watch? You know, Just until things calm down a bit? She turned to Alex, her expression growing more concerned. Then she turned to Sanders. Do you think that's necessary? I don't know, but it's better to be safe than sorry. Your son is lucky I happened to be in the neighborhood when I was and got here before Mr. Henderson could really hurt him. What do you mean really hurt him? Did he hit you, Alex? Just a little on the back, Alex said, not wanting to whine about the throbbing pain. Let me see. She yanked up his shirt, embarrassing him further. Oh my God, your whole back is bruised. It's not that bad, I swear. I've been hit harder in soccer. This'll be gone in a couple of days. Yes. Mom turned to Sanders. I want someone here to watch over us. Alex closed his eyes and sighed. The last thing he wanted was for people to see that they, the family of the man who shot their sons and daughters, had security stationed at their house. It would be seen as a big fuck you to the victims' families. Yes, ma'am. We'll send a truck by in 20 minutes to keep an eye out for you all. Thank you, she said. I don't know what we would have done if you hadn't been here. We're so lucky you happened to be in the neighborhood. Right time, right place. Sanders handed her a card, wished them well, then headed toward the SUV. As it rolled away, Alex found his mind turning over the phrase Sanders had said. Right time, right place. That's when Alex realized he hadn't seen Sanders arrive in a car. Had he just happened to be walking by on foot at the exact moment Mr. Henderson decided to go apeshit? Something wasn't right. Aubrey started crying, pulling Alex and his mother into the house. But he continued considering the odd coincidence of Sanders saving the day.